Hi, my name is Linda Lemus, and I'm an assistant teaching professor and director and coordinator of Spanish language instruction at the University of California, Riverside. Our program runs on quarters. There are 3 quarters, they're 10 weeks each. We also have 2 summer sessions at 5 weeks each. Each quarter, we have about 21 TAs and 5 full-time lectures and 2 to 4 adjuncts. Um, each quarter has about 35 to 40 sections, and summer sessions tend to have about 15 to 20 sections per session. Textbooks in our program has become a more central tool than I would hope for, particularly in the beginning courses and low intermediate courses. However, for more advanced intermediate levels in our advanced L2 and advanced heritage language courses, we rely less on textbooks and more on open educational resources or authentic materials. That could be anything from newspapers, current events, news, segments, but it could also be social media. It could be a variety of things that students might find relevant or interesting. Um, as a language director, I don't think my perspective has changed much. Since I got to Riverside almost 5 years ago, fall 2020, I feel strong about having content be relevant and meaningful to our students. And my goal from the beginning has been to create a place-based curriculum based on our student population and who are in our courses, but also of the community that surrounds our university. So in selecting a book when we have to, the primary criteria is to have a supportive, easy to use instructor platform and resources. Ideally, it's easy to navigate for both the instructors and the students, and also easy to build for myself. Um, for students, it's also important to have a workbook component. It's almost expected by them because that's how they've, come along in taking courses. Um, but in the selection of the book, I mean, that's what stands out the more, not so much the content, because the content tends to be very similar in the courses. There might be slight differences on approaches, but at the end of the day, they're not too different from each other. Um, so I ultimately end up making sure, to go with something that aligns the most with our program ideology and our approaches to teaching, and that it's like available. Um, when I arrived at the University of California, Riverside, I completed an informal needs analysis for our students, just to kind of help inform our decisions on content. As a former instructional designer and senior learning designer, it was important for me to establish the student learning outcomes first. However, many times the outcomes end up being modified because we rely so heavily on a book. But in our more advanced courses, I am able to follow a design and development process of objectives first, materials then, activities, and lastly, assessments. Um, the alignment of these 4 things are done by making sure the materials provide the content needed to support the objectives. The activities provide the opportunity to reinforce the materials in supporting the objectives. And lastly, that the assessments are also connected with the materials and activities in supporting the objectives. It is important to make sure these are all in alignment, to not create, busy work, unnecessary work, and to make sure you are providing a properly supported path for students to achieve the outcomes or objectives that you're striving for as a program. Um, Sometimes the objectives or outcomes that are set by the textbooks do not match the goals that we have for our students. So we'll have to modify that. The primary goal for me and my program is communication. When the focus is primarily on form or culture or history that students aren't yet familiar with, um, it makes it difficult for them to develop communication skills because they might not be as invested in the content. So we try to, complement or supplement the book's shortcomings with content that will connect with students to put what they have learned in action, right? So if our students are, of different backgrounds. We try to include other cultures, not just Latin America, Spain, but also US Spanish. We also have a big population of Asian American students. We try and include their culture as well. So things that have more relevancy that students might be using that language to talk in the future. Um, so to reflect diversity, inclusivity, and accessibility, overall, I start with a universal design for learning approach to help, support this. Um, this is where the needs analysis kind of also comes in to inform information that can help us integrate relevant and meaningful and accessible content. Um, at a minimum for most students, and if possible, for everyone. We can't always catch it, but we really want to go towards a more proactive approach, right? Thinking ahead of time rather than wait for something to happen, like, a student needs a voice reader and our content isn't easily accessible that way, then that creates a reactive approach where we have to do something at the moment to fix an issue we haven't addressed, right? So we want to think ahead as much as possible. And sometimes the platforms of textbooks are easily accessible, sometimes they're not, and we might have to complement even those kind of things, right? Diversity also, again, for the area and community or the demographics of our students might not be represented in the book. So we also have to find content, right, that reflects the diversity and the inclusion of where we want students to see themselves in our curriculum and to giving these opportunities to connect to the language through their culture, through, their experience at jobs, if they're military, if they have a family, all these things, even besides like ethnicity, might come into play and make them interested, right, in their development of Spanish language. Um, the support systems and trainings that are provided to the instructors has been minimal from the department perspective, I would say. Sometimes I've created asynchronous activities for them to work on and interact. We do have a teaching methods course. Our students are required to take it, and it's more tailored towards our population. However, some of our adjunct instructors and lecturers will sit in yearly, some of them, to keep up to date with new ideas, also of addressing, certain tasks and content for our students. So that's what we do. In the fall, we have a small kind of training as well. Sometimes I'll hold like a little mini live Zoom training as well. Our Teaching and Technology Center also has a lot of good ideas for the pedagogy side. And sometimes it's geared for both TAs and lecturers. And we do have a large participation by a small group that frequently attend these sessions. To adapt and complement the books or the content that we have for the courses, To meet our need of our students, I do provide flexibility to instructors on implementing a little bit of their own personality in the classroom. I think it's really key to kind of find that balance between what you need to teach and how you like to teach it and what's important to you. I also think, the more we teach in one place, we might get disconnected with the updates of where our population is now. So the needs analysis helps, but also having grad students that sometimes are not too far in age or they connect more with undergraduate students also helps kind of see where the new generation is and what we might be lacking. But I think making those connections and building a bridge directly to undergraduates and, asking them on the spot what they think, what worked, what didn't work, is also key. I would give the language program directors and instructors, the advice of either shifting into a textbook, a more like less central feature of a textbook, which we should all kind of be gearing towards, that you first maybe start a little bit more hybrid while you still have your textbook adopted, by complementing with more open educational resources and, and to explore with not only people at your university, but maybe other local colleges and universities in your area, because they might have similar students to you and you could really get good ideas, right? So I think collaboration is also key, and finding the right things for your students, right? If you're moving towards OER completely, you have to make sure that you have enough activities and assessment to support the content that you have, and that there is not only relevancy, but also update of the content that the OER. So you don't want to use something outdated, right? That is one of the issues with the textbooks, is that sometimes with new editions, rarely anything is updated with like content, and students don't know maybe who the artists are, or maybe there are things that have changed in certain countries, and so forth. I see the role of textbooks not evolving too much in the next 5 years. I do see a lot more activity in the, creating more textbooks in Spanish, not only for L2, but also L3 and heritage language learning. I think like maybe in the 10 years, if publishers want to stay relevant, that they might include ways that is easier for one to adapt content, to add content. They have those features, but they tend not to be super user friendly. Or create a system where, a customer service specialist in the publishing company supports you as a subject matter expert, right? As to guide you in the addition of content, right? So that you do have this alignment, and that your resources aren't too sporadic, that they are in alignment, you're not creating busy work, that you are staying focused, but in a way that's meaningful to your program and your students.